plus years. And I've run several shelters, but about 10 years ago, decided to go out and go on my own and become a consultant. And so I've been working with shelters across the US, which is what led me to this acting role for Director of Operations for Hawaii Humane, which has been wonderful. And I've also worked across Australia, so with the RSPCA, who has shelters and organizations in each of the states and territories. I've worked for them for about 8 years until COVID hit. And then I've not been over really since this last year. I haven't traveled since February, I suppose, to Australia. But my emphasis in my work is operations with a specialty in behavior. It's something I really love and, kind of cherish the opportunity to be able to work with the animals, both dogs, cats, and even other species, right? So, because we also have to take care of our bunnies and things too. Can you all hear me all right?
I can. Excellent.
Okay. Yeah. So anyhow, that's just a little bit about who I am. I'm happy to answer any questions if you have. And like I mentioned, I know I've really appreciated a few of the emails that I've received. Thank you so much for reaching out and talking. And anyhow, we're going to move forward. And of course, I think everyone knows Rob. And does everyone know Stephen? As y'all, yeah, I figured so, but just making sure. All right. And Cherise, she's on, but you can't really see her. So that might be another person if you've not met. She's a staff member as well. So we're only going to have you on for about an hour and a half, and we want to make sure that we give plenty of time for questions and answers at the end, right? Because I'm sure you have lots of questions and maybe comments and things that you're curious about too. One of the things we wanted to change is looking at adding a new communication protocol for volunteers to us. This way we can capture information very quickly and very live. So 7 days a week, somebody's reviewing the information you're sharing with us. It's an email address. And I'm going to just see if this works here. Hopefully it will. If I click on my dog, it should take me to the protocol. Oh, love that. All right. So can you guys see this okay?
Yes,
I'm going to just make it a little larger.
Thank you.
Okay, perfect. Yep. Is that a little bit better? And we'll certainly get a copy of this out to you as well. So you'll have a copy of it in your hands. But this is a protocol that we put together. And really what it is for one, it's for also staff members who really don't have access to our PetPoint database. So a lot of our administrative staff and those type of roles, they also have experiences and observe things while they're walking through the shelter. And we wanted to make sure they have an outlet and to share that information as well. So in addition to them, this is also really primarily to be used for you as the volunteers who are working every day, right? One-on-one with these dogs, in this case, and with the dogs. And we want your feedback. And that's not just negative feedback, right? Like maybe an animal's having a challenge. We definitely want that information. But we also want to hear your other experiences with them. If you're having good experiences, especially if you're seeing improvements in a dog, let's say he's fearful and maybe he's been, tails tucked around you, those kind of things initially. But now when he sees you, his tail starts loosely wagging and he's right up kind of coming at you and very pleasant. We'd like to get that type of feedback too, right? Because that tells us how much that dog is improving and adjusting to his environment. So important, because your feedback we haven't been able to really capture and maintain. This is a way that we can capture it and maintain. So the idea is that you'll put in an email. We've got a template I'm going to show you here as we get down toward the end. And you will share your experience. And then there's a group of us that are going to be on that email distribution list. So we'll be reading it on a daily basis. Even if, say, Rob's off on his 2 regular days off, I'll be reviewing it. Stephen will be available to review it. Like there's several managers that are going to be sitting, myself included, and then the new DO, who we'll talk about here in just a minute too. But we'll all be kind of sitting on that and being able to see that information right away. It gives us the ability then to make any changes that we might need to for him or her, right, the dog, or implement maybe some different behavior training opportunities, whatever that might be. So really, I'm kind of excited about it. I think it's a great way to be able to get feedback from you in a very thorough fashion and also in a very in time kind of mode, right? It doesn't just get maybe written on a board that could potentially get wiped off or somebody's not able to review the board for maybe another day. Rob, just so you know, I've got Michelle joining in. There's another joint. I should just let her into the room. All right, so anyway, so that's this document. And then as we move down, just so you know, the behavior information and review team is the animal care manager, which is Stephen, the admission manager, which is Jenny. So I'm sure many of you know Jenny. Rob is the behavior manager, the adoption manager, who is Kai, and then the DO. So be myself, and then as Troy comes on, Troy will join us as well. And then, of course, if the behavior that you're noticing is really concerning and you feel like there's a safety risk, we really need you to seek out, right, the on-site manager. So you can either go to a staff member and then they can find the manager, but we want to make sure we're able to get on top of those very quickly as well. So in writing your email, the only things that we have that would be very helpful for us that we want you to do is in the subject line, right, of the email, to put the animal's ID as well as their name. And then you can put in the summary of the email the description of what you've seen, what you've observed, what you experienced throughout. So it's kind of in the body, there's this who was there. So were there other people present? And if they were, if you could identify them, very helpful. I think maybe I should just take a moment too to better explain why this is important. And maybe you've seen it even recently, right, with the Dala and Walter and some other dogs. What we're doing is really now taking this very holistic view and review of each individual dog. So it's not just a snapshot of what, like one incident that makes a decision, right? Although if that's a severe action, it certainly is going to have an impact on the outcome. But what we are doing is we're collecting that information, but we're also looking at all of the other information that we have on that dog, history from the owner, the finder, officers, if it was maybe picked up by an officer, how is he handled and how did he do in the vet clinic, how did he do in admissions, what's animal care's experience, other volunteers' experience with the dog, and really looking at it as a whole, right? And trying to make the best decisions that we can for each individual animal. And that may include, you know, putting on different types of restrictions or recommendations for rehoming. It might be that maybe this animal, this particular dog, would do better if we can get him out of the shelter environment. So maybe into foster or looking at an adoption partner, or in the worst case scenario, if we have to make those really difficult decisions, then we know that we've really made those decisions based on this overall information, not just, you know, a little snapshot of information at the time. And so to be able to really, the more information we have when we're reviewing animals, the better, right? That's what really helps us make the best decisions for these guys in rehoming and finding that right home so they don't come back, right? We want to also avoid them being returned because maybe they weren't prepared for what they were going home, and we need to be able to share as much of that information as possible. It really comes down to being as transparent with information as we can. And that's really our ultimate goal, right? Is to be able to be that transparent. We want them to be successful. And the only way we can do that is by gathering as much information as possible. So if you have an incident occur, when it occurred, so we want you to include that as well, where it occurred, because that may make a difference, right? Sometimes things happen when they're in a small enclosure on a leash. They're going to feel more pressure and stress in that situation than, say, maybe out in a yard. And so just knowing the location of maybe where those animals are struggling would be very helpful for us too, because then we might be able to avoid putting them in similar circumstances where they're uncomfortable and then begin working on that kind of situation. And then just explaining the details, right? So what was happening before the incident? How was it going? Did you notice anything? And then what happens during the incident? What was it? What occurred? and then the consequences. And I think, Stephen and Rob and I have been working really, diligently now, trying to make sure that we're looking at things in a very observational way. So have you heard the term observational language before? Maybe some of you. I know a lot of you have some really good dog experience. So you're probably, if you haven't heard of it, you're already probably doing it. But what observational language is really describing it in what your observation is in the body posturing of the dog versus giving it interpretive language, which might say he's sweet, he's fearful, he's aggressive. I don't really know what those interpretive words really look like. Because to me, I fall in love with so many of these guys that even even in strange circumstances, I'm going to think they're just as sweet as they can be, and we just have a few issues we need to work out. But I need to know about those issues too. So, like, what's observational language? Oh, I hope Michelle's not having too many problems. She got booted out, I think. There's back maybe. So here's one way to kind of get understand what I mean by observational language. If I were to ask each one of you to visualize a tree right now inside your head, everybody just think of a tree, a specific tree, right? I know this sounds silly, but just stay with me. I promise it's not too silly. And does anybody want to share what their tree looks like? Somebody tell me what the tree
Mine has
is.
a lot of
like.
Mine has
Go ahead,
a lot
Don.
of very strong roots
Excellent.
in my tree, and it's one I selected right outside my patio because the roots are starting to undermine the lawn, so I'm going to have to
Oh, no.
address that at some time. So this is a very strong tree with lots of roots.
Gotcha. Did anybody else have trees with lots of roots? No, probably not.
My tree
That's
didn't
very
have roots
specific.
when I was thinking of
Wow,
it.
Rob, what did your tree look like, Rob?
My tree just it was like you can see the trunk, the huge trunk. It's a brown trunk, and it was a lot of green leaves coming from the tree.
Right. So those are perfect examples, right? When I had you describe what your tree looked like, then we all started looking and actually visually seeing what your tree looks like, rather than just a tree. Because we all have our own trees in our head. What does a tree look like? It can look like so many different things. So observational language with dogs is very similar. Like if I were to, well, we'll get to another dog photo, but like just thinking about if I were to say he were fearful, you all probably have some vision of what that fearful dog looks like, right? You automatically kind of put a picture in your head of a fearful dog. If I were to describe that fearful dog, if I said, when you walked by the kennel, he came charging from the back of the kennel out to the front, rah, 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 with his mouth wide open, rah, 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 right? Barking and growling at you, showing all of his teeth and biting the wire, pulling back. Did any of you think of a fearful dog? Did any of you have that vision for your fearful dog? Probably
No.
not, right? But in fact, that is probably a fearful dog, right?
Now,
He's
Renee,
just displaying a different response.
Renee, can I ask
Go
you
ahead,
something?
Don.
When you're talking about fearful, you mean fearful? I'm fearful of the dog, or the dog is fearful of me, or both?
No, I'm talking about the dog is being fearful for you. So when we're
Okay.
doing observational, this is a very good question, Don. When we're doing observational language, it's in relation to what I see the dog is doing. Because here's the deal, dogs are posturing, right?
Yeah.
They're using their body to communicate with us. And they communicate for two reasons. They communicate because they either want to get closer to us, or they communicate that they want distance from us because they're fearful most often. It's like 98% of the time it's fear response. And so if we can read in observational language what they're telling us, then I can give him back the appropriate information to let him know, I hear you, I know that you're frightened, right? That little dog that I just described to you where he came running out and was showing you all of his teeth, that type of fear response is a dog who more than likely was displaying like back in the corner, maybe paw up,
Yeah.
avoiding eye contact, but people were continually walking in on him. Like we were actually decreasing the distance when he was actually for increasing the distance. And what happens in that circumstance then, he feels he needs to escalate, right, in his behavior to get what he wants. So the way he does that is he becomes actively defensive, where he charges out at you and bares all of your teeth, which is defensiveness. And then we step away and then he runs back. What he's done is effectively gotten more space from us, right?
You mean he's letting
these are
us
just
know, right?
examples, and this is a
Sorry, you mean he's
yeah,
letting
he
us know
definitely. I
right
mean,
away?
he was already telling you.
Okay.
Yeah, he's already telling you I want distance, but maybe we weren't giving it to him, right? So we know that he was cowering in the corner, but we still came inside the kennel. So from his
Mhm.
perspective, we were giving him the wrong answer. He's asking for distance, and we actually decreased the distance. And so from his
Okay.
perspective, he needs to escalate his response back to get what he wants, which is us to move away, right? So these are this is kind of an example. I didn't plan on going into this, but this is one kind of training that we really want to continue doing and learning about dog language, more advanced body language between us and the dogs that we're working with. So exciting kind of stuff. Hopefully you'll be interested in attending those trainings as we get them scheduled for you. Well, we just started with animal care staff. It's been fun with Stephen and his team, who are just phenomenal. And so really exciting being able to work with them. It's such a pleasure. But anyhow, in working with this in this email, the more description of an information that you can provide, the better. Now, the other thing that might happen is you can, if you just gave us a little bit of a simple kind of description, we're more than likely going to just contact you and ask some questions, right? Because we may want to find out a little bit more about what's happened. And then we do have an email template that you can have and review if that would be easier for you to use in responding back for that email. But I hope that this is a good way for you, that you feel like you have an outlet to really communicate and get behavior information to us in a very quick, clean fashion. So are there any questions on the big email, this particular protocol?
I just want to make a comment.
And we will get you a call.
I know that some
we'll
of you
come back.
have been sending me emails and things like that. So this would take the place of those emails that you've been sending me to my
When it
personal
says
email.
no
That's way
correlation,
more.
Is that the same thing as no association?
Yes,
Okay.
yes. So some books use those words like for synonyms.
Mhm.
Association means you're related, and that's what correlated means.
Oh,
Yeah, so if you see one word, it means.
I think
same.
Michelle is working.
okay. Thank
You're
you.
welcome.
I have a question.
I'm just going to put her on mute. Okay, go ahead, Karen.
What does the acronym BIG mean?
So, I'm so sorry. I should have gone through that a little bit more detail.
And I also have a
I went
question
to the
before,
wrong screen,
a
but let me
follow-up
bring it over.
question before you say anything. Will this information be shared amongst the volunteers, or is that just going to you and the volunteer that supplies the information? Or will there be some sort of feedback so that other volunteers also have, knowledge about a certain animal in this regard?
So I would say,
Yeah. So
go ahead, Renee.
go ahead, Rob.
Well, I mean, we would still be using the behavior board as well. So that would be more for like point of contact kind of thing. So before you take any animals out, if you don't have a chance to check the email, you can also look on the behavior board. And also what you guys will be sending us via the email, we will be able to put this in the animal's record as well. So the email has a more far-reaching ramifications than the behavior board. So this will go into the animal's record, and when we're reviewing the record, that information will get relayed.
Relayed
And then
to us
Karen, I think to
volunteers?
answer, Karen, I think to answer your question is the feedback that we'll provide back is that once we're reviewing it, if anything changes, right, with that particular animal, if we change the color code of it, or if we want to put in some kind of a behavior training implementations, which, you know, you guys might be able to incorporate into your activities. That information then will come back out to you, right? And just either a group email, or as Rob mentioned, it might be something that we write on the board to give you that feedback to know now you need to handle this animal a little bit differently. That help? Because you don't have really access to the pet point. The pet point is, as far as sharing, right, this information will go in on the animal's record, which will also be nice because we're capturing all information now on individual animals, versus if something just comes through, that's good then, but then we don't have the ability to review it in the future because it didn't get put into the animal's record. And we really want to be able to capture all of the information and have it available. And then it even helps when animals come back, right? Because we can go, oh, this dog was here 6 months ago. I don't really remember, you know, where we were at, but now we can go back in and really have a good understanding of who that dog was even previously of coming into the shelter. But we definitely need to get information back out to you as it relates to handling those animals differently, or any behavior plans that they go on.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Actually, it's for Robert. This is Lannis. So getting back to
Sorry.
Milani. Hi. Getting back to Milani,
Hi.
the whiteboard said that she was reactive to like bicycles, skateboard, and mopeds. So when I was walking her along King Street, bicycle came by, moped came by, but she didn't react to it. Is that something we need to report to Robert and let him know?
Yes.
Okay.
Because behavior, it's like really
That
dynamic,
definitely would be-
and as we work on it, we should see improvements, and that's showing us, hey, she's improving. And then, you know, she may still have
Right.
those proclivities. She may still have, you know, show those behaviors, but less and less and less. Or it may be a different behavior she may show, and we need to know that
Right.
information. So maybe we want to change the plan accordingly.
Thank you.
I had a
That would,
question.
yeah, definitely be very helpful.
I had a question. Robert, it may be a silly question, but when we were talking about the dog that was fearful and came and growled and then ran back, at that point, do I walk away from the dog, or do I make another effort to get closer to him?
I would say if the dog is giving you indications that he does not want, that, you know, they don't want you to get closer to them, I would, you know, read that information. I would, you know, heed that warning. That's like me trying to communicate something to you that I don't like. That's the dog communicating something to you that he, you know, may not like.
Right.
Then you may want to put that on the board as well, or send us an email, and then, you know, and then we
Yeah.
can actually review that and see what, you know, what may be causing that information. So if you give us good information, hey, I was approaching the kennel and the dog was, you know, showing teeth, growling, backing up, and, you know, as Renee said, that would definitely help us to make a behavior plan. And then maybe, you know, maybe update, you know, who can walk him and where he can be walked, etc. Which would be part of the plan as well.
Yeah, because that's what I've been relying on all along, is the behavior board, because I didn't realize
Yeah.
this thing with the email. On a
this is new.
follow-up with that, because Karen asked, we still didn't get the answer on the acronym for BIG, what that stood for.
The ABC, is that what you're talking? Oh, BIG. It
BIG.
stands for Behavior Information Group,
Okay,
is what the BIG stands for, Behavior Information Group.
okay.
Is that what you were asking, Karen? I'm sorry, I misunderstood. Okay, so sorry. I thought you were going back to the ABC here, so I just.
No, I
about
was
what
interested in
you're
what it
putting
actually meant. Yes, thank you.
Yeah, Behavior Information Group. Sorry about that. Dawn and Rob, I just want to clarify one thing. We are asking you to no longer put up your behavior concerns on the board. We need you to send the email.
Okay,
Right? Because what's happened with just putting information on the board, it may not get seen every day. We think there are times where it actually may even get rubbed off partially.
yeah,
And or it could be days before that information gets back, you know, to Rob, or we're trying to make it now where we're getting the information immediate, like in a day, right?
especially if it's an
capturing
aggressive
everything
dog, you
that's
want to
around.
know that right.
Yes,
Okay.
right. Because we want to make sure, I mean, you know, the other side of this coin is, I mean, our emphasis, of course, is we want to make sure that the animals are being cared for and we're providing for them in the best way that we possibly can. But we also want to keep you safe, right? And so if there's a dog that you really at this point, based on the current behavior, shouldn't be handling, then I want to make sure that that dog is appropriately marked so you're safe until we can work through logistics of what's happened, right?
Also,
And, you know, right now, this is all new, so it might be a little bit slower than what we would like, but as we really begin implementing and working together as a team, then the time frame will get much, much faster, right? And so now we can start really working on those animals live. You send an email, oh, great, no problem. Let's do da 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 da, and we can get those things right into place.
and also by
So
sending it
it-
through the big email, you'll have a team of people looking at it. You'll have multiple eyes looking at it, and then we can come with a plan as a collective.
Yeah, right. And you know, and our intention, of course, it's all needing to grow, but our intention, of course, is just to continue to add in not only behavior enrichment, additional enrichment, right, for the animals during the day and during their in care time, but also really influencing behavior training and incorporating some learning ability and making them mentally think while they're in care, not just, you know, maybe physically getting some work, because mental exhaustion is something that's very helpful as well. So
Can I
you know,
ask something again?
Sure.
I went into Peanut's kennel last week to take him for a walk, and he was so excited. He jumped up and he got my arm with his toenail, and I got a gash. Not, you know, just it was bleeding, but it was nothing. So I was carrying on, and I happened to run into Natalie, and she said, "What happened?" And I said, "Oh, well, nothing." And I was concerned that the dog would get in trouble or something. She said, "No, absolutely not." But she says, "Please fill out an incident report," which I did. But I wanted to stress again to everybody that, you know, he's a sweet dog. He just got so excited.
Right.
But you think we should still, everything like that, we should make it
Definitely,
okay.
right? Because here's the deal. I really thoroughly, I know we all do, right? Robert and Stephen and myself, we all understand your fear. If you report something where the animal's injured you or he's done some behavior that's concerning, there's going to be a fear that once you put that in, he might immediately be like removed from the adoption floor, and then euthanasia is going to occur. So I know that that's a fear, and I think there's been some, you know, some basis, right, to kind of create that fear a little bit, just, you know, being as transparent as we can be. And what we want you to know is that type of situation, Don, what that does is, one, if you told us that that's what happened, the one thing we would do is we would look and see, does his toenails just need to be trimmed, right? So maybe they haven't been trimmed for a while. The second thing is, okay, let's work on calm with that dog.
Mm-hmm.
And these are skills that we want to provide you as the volunteers who are handling the dogs, as well as our staff, right? These are kind of new techniques that everyone's going to be learning. How do I teach that dog when I walk into the kennel to immediately offer a sit or a down or whatever we want to teach them, right? So it's a training opportunity. But if we don't know that he's offering that, then imagine when that first adopter goes in to meet him and he's jumping up on them and scratching them, and then they're going, yeah, no, that was too much for me. So the behavior information, although I know that there's that fear that somehow it's going to put them in bad light, please, I hope we can change that thought process for you, that you know that's not the case, right? We're going to really review them and make the best decisions we can for them. What can we do to make it better?
And that makes me feel much better.
And then also we're asking you to put in positive things too. So if the behavior is changing, that's going to help give us a holistic picture of what's going on with the dog. It doesn't always have to be negative things, but but definitely report those things and then any improvements as well.
That makes me feel much better. Thank you.
I'm sorry. Can I just add a comment too? If we see anything that is going on with a dog, especially if they're extra excited or they're not behaving the way they used to, we gotta let adoptions know as well, in case they bring people or patrons in to see the dog. And then they can
Yeah.
also go ahead and assess the dog and contact Robert, Stephen,
Yeah.
check in with Kai. So just wanted to throw that in.
Yeah, no, thank you. Thank you.
Can I ask a
So
question?
this is just one, of course.
Hi.
Oh, there you are.
Sorry, this is Sally. My name shows up under my husband's for Navy Zoom he did. Really quick,
Oh.
do we use the big email just for dogs on the adoption floor or for those that are level 2 and can
Oh,
walk
no,
in the
for
back
all,
of the house?
yeah.
Okay. Okay.
And in fact, it's not just going to be for dogs, right? It's just we're starting out with the dog volunteers. But if people notice a cat behavior challenge, same thing, right? If they notice a bunny territorial issue,
Okay.
they can certainly send it to the behavior. Yeah, anything to do with behavior with any of our animals.
Perfect. And then, so I'm there Sunday mornings, and a lot of times, or sometimes new dogs are brought out, so there's nothing on the board. Can I continue to write, but sorry, my dog is saying hello. Can we continue to do both? So I could send an email out, but also if it's Pua's first day and I noticed, cowering or tail tucked initially, but then warmed up, can we do both so that perhaps the afternoon volunteers can get something?
Yeah, absolutely.
Perfect.
Just make sure that priority is that you get the emails out to us.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yeah. You're welcome. And thanks for asking that question, because that was a good clarity question.
Thanks so much.
About who can send on the animals. All right. So this is just a quick example of what, one of the things that we can, I know it sounds probably silly, just loose leash walking. How do we train these dogs right? And you guys do it all the time now, getting them out on leash and making sure that they're not pulling you. And some dogs, of course, pull more than others. And so keeping information, giving that information to us or providing that information to us also allows us the ability to choose the right kind of walking equipment, right? So Rob will be able to identify if he would do better with a gentle leader, or maybe he needs a harness, or maybe he needs this kind of, so that's certainly going to make a difference. But our goal as we're moving forward is to make sure that every one of our dogs learn how to do a nice loose leash walk, where they're not pulling you, where they're just, they don't have to walk by your side. It's not that kind of, but they need to be nice and easy to walk on leash. And when they're not, to not allow them to pull, right? To stop. So they have to stop, and then they kind of look at you, and then you can start moving again, or you can turn around and go the opposite direction is another nice way to prevent them from pulling against you. So these are types of little mini type of trainings that we would like to do for those individuals as well, who maybe are new, haven't done a lot of dog training, or anybody who wants to attend. So we'll get these scheduled out there too. And Robert, I think you've already got these handouts for maybe not loose leash walking. Did I give you this one? I can't remember now. Sorry.
You button. I have loose leash walking and then and weight, and I'll distribute those to the volunteers.
Right. So, and just remember, any kind like this with loose leash walking, when you've got a dog out, it's not just about physically taking them out and walking, right? It's about getting out and having human interaction and having mental, conversation and stimulation with the person as well. And so just kind of staying with them and look at me, what a good boy, yay, right? And just kind of keeping them with you and keeping them thinking is really, really helpful. The other thing we wanted to just remind, right, because getting the dogs out on leashes and walks is very, a lot, right, of what's happening throughout the day, is make sure to maintain enough distance from the other kennels. So when you've got a dog out and he's walking next to you, please avoid, right? Do at least, like, if you can, as much of a 5 or 6 foot distance from walking by the other kennels. If you can't, then just keep moving as quickly as you can. Try to put the dog on the opposite side of you, so you're in between the dog and the kennel, right? Which may be a little uncomfortable depending on what direction you're going, but it's better because you kind of create a little bit of a barrier between that dog and another dog.
Yeah.
And this is not because we think these dogs are dog aggressive, but what happens is, for the dogs in the kennel, you know this, right? You see it. They start developing kennel barrier frustration because they want to be out too.
Yep.
And so they'll start barking at the dogs that are walking by. And then, of course, if this dog's too close, this dog's going to start barking at those dogs. And now you've got fence fighting all the way down the road. And
Yeah.
that's not healthy for them. And they're now learning behavior. And so we really want to avoid them learning poor
Mhm.
behavior as they're doing it. So the
Mhm.
more that we can distance from those kennels, the better. And
Yeah.
just alongside with that, it's also really important to keep in mind where you have conversations. So if you stop to talk to an adopter, or you stop to talk to another volunteer, or, to try to avoid, right, stopping right in front of
Mhm.
the dogs that are in kennels, because again, they're going to be very frustrated with that. And then
Yeah.
they start doing the barking in the cage front.
Mhm.
And then unfortunately what happens, and I'm probably getting a little too detailed, I'm watching the time, but what can happen for those dogs, and many of our dogs, right, is they become what we call overly aroused. And so they get so hyped up, right, and their eyes begin dilating, and now they're really quite difficult to even get out in a safe way because they're in an arousal state.
Yeah.
And when they become aroused, they can't think, like they truly, it's a different part of the brain, there's conflict there. And more importantly, they lose a bit of their inhibition. So a dog who really wouldn't do harm, he could potentially now start doing some harm by hard mouthing you, pulling your clothes, pulling your hair, and it's out of response of being in the arousal level. So we really want to try to keep our dogs down out of arousal as much as we can. And these pitties and bulldogs and the young adolescents, they're at such a part of their life right now in the shelter environment, right? Or being in a shelter at that age and in those breed types, really difficult for them, to just have to be in a kennel. And then lastly, the only other thing I want to touch base on that is really important, right? To if you are walking them, make sure that they have some positive experience with you as a human inside their kennel too. So they're not always trying to get out,
Mhm.
right? That's where they get the positive. And so they don't want to be in their kennel. We need them to be able to be in their kennels, and that's a positive as well.
Mhm.
And this was another one, and I know Rob said he's got this. So we'll have these handouts available, but wait, that's something you can teach them right now. You get them out of kennel every day, you walk through gates every day. They learn, and the reward is to be able to go forward, right? To go through the gate, to get their food, to get the treat. But they also learn the word, and that's going to be very helpful for them as well. I'm just looking at the time. So any questions though on kind of the training and what's coming up and where we really want to go with the dog behavior program right now? I know it's really fast. This is just our first meeting.
This is
All
Andrea.
right. Well, if not, Rob, I'm gonna.
Okay.
Oh yeah, go
Yeah,
ahead.
so I really like this. I can't have dogs because I have cats, so they don't go together in my household. That's why I'm volunteering. But what I did is, okay, I'm not connected with that person at all, but there's an online dog trainer called Doggy Dan, and he's from New Zealand.
Mhm.
And the way he teaches his dogs is just, to me, amazing. And what I'm seeing right now, what you talked about, is is aligned with what he does. And I asked him when I started out working with the Hawaiian Humane Society, is what is the best thing I can do for these dogs in the kennel? And he said, that's really hard. But what he said, you can go and just, so I think everybody should know about this. Maybe Rob, have a look at him, see what you think. He has four really good things. He calls it the 4 golden rules or something. And one of the rules is you walk in and you just ignore the dog. And, you ignore the dog, you turn if the dog is friendly and you dare to do that, you turn the back to the dog and you let the dog sniff you and you just go in the territory of the dog, and then the dog realizes, okay, that's not a threat. And so that simple thing helps a lot. And I do that. And I think if Rob, if you can find how, if anything if that helps, I know you the expert and you trained in all this, but if say volunteers could have access to this, if it's useful, for example, right? Online thing like that, just as a suggestion. Doggy Den
Yeah,
from New
no,
Zealand.
thank you. Yeah, no, it's really important. You know, it actually, training is actually pretty easy. It's actually getting the people to understand what certain things actually influence, right? I mean, because we can influence them with doing very little. Sometimes it's just waiting them out and letting them go through their entire repertoire, right, of activity until they hit the thing we want, and then we're like, yay! And then they go, oh, right? So it's actually quite good for them to use that mental stimulation. It's a bit exhausting, but then they get good sleep, because a lot of times in our shelters, dogs don't get good sleep. One of the things to really note, if they're sleeping, it's like, wow, that's great, right? That's actually a positive, because think about your dogs in your own home. They probably sleep between 16 and 18 hours out of the day when you really break it down, right? And so I love that. And we definitely will have a look at him. But yeah, it's just being very simple. You can just sit and read on the outside of their kennel, and they're in the presence of a human being in a calm manner. That's wonderful, you know, and or sitting inside with them and they just have that calm activity. And the more that we can give them calm in their kennel, and they know that positive things come in, the less they're going to be jumping and only wanting to get out. Because we also reinforce bad behavior. If they're jumping up, and we go, oh, he wants out, and we let him out, we've immediately reinforced that behavior of jumping up.
Yeah.
Right. So, yeah. All right. So, Rob, I'm going to turn it over to you, and you want to talk a little bit about what to do if an animal escapes.
Some of you may know this, but this is just a review. First, we want to try to avoid escapes. So what we want to do is make sure all of the walking equipment is on properly, fitted. We want the leash to be at least 2 finger width, apart, so that the dog won't get loose. If we have harnesses, we want the same thing. We want to make sure everything is snug and fitted properly. Also, we want to be looking at the animal's behavior, any bolting behavior, anything like that. We want to take a look, before we're letting the dog out and things like that. Things like weight definitely will help with some of the escaping, things like that. So this is inside of the kennel and outside of the kennel as well. But if we do get into a situation where the animal does escape, we want to keep an eye on the dog and see, the direction that the dog is going into, so that, when we do call dispatch, and dispatch, the number is on your name tag. So if anything happens there, you can definitely give them a call. So keep an eye on the animal. We're not chasing the animal. We're not chasing them into the streets or anything like that. If you can keep visual contact on the animal, then that's perfect. Go ahead and call dispatch. Let them know, what the situation was. Call them as soon as possible. And then if you have to come back and you don't have the dog in your possession, go ahead and let any of the managers know that's on the ground, any of the operation managers. So because the field services and operations, we kind of do different things, but we have a concerted effort in trying to get that animal back. So let someone know that is on campus as well when that is happening. And then if an animal, and then after that, once we get the animal back and things like that, we will review what happened, and we will also continue to do training for that, just so that it doesn't happen again another time. But mistakes do happen. We're not into like blaming and things like that and stuff like that, but we definitely want good outcomes and things like that, and we know that you do care for the dogs. You have any questions in that regard?
How
About
often does
animal
that happen,
escapes?
actually?
Since I've been here, that I know about, one time so far that I know of. So it doesn't really happen very often. You guys do a really good job. So it doesn't happen that often at all.
I have a question, Rob.
Yes, Don.
maybe it was a month ago, I noticed that most of the gates from the parking lot into the campus were locked. And I questioned somebody about it, and they said that somebody had gotten into campus and actually taken a dog. And I wondered if that animal was ever found. Do you know anything about that? I was quite concerned by that. I thought, my God, somebody came in and took one of the dogs.
I do not know about that specific situation, what happened there, but that is we want to make sure that the animal's not on campus and things like that, and we try to close it just to make sure things are safe and things like that. We don't want that person who may have taken a dog to come back and things like that. So that is just one of our safety things
that
we
made sense when they locked those other gates. But I do notice that when I walk, a lot of times the gate closest to the adjacent building is open a lot. People don't close it tightly and it remains open. I found that in more than one case.
And
yeah, we are trying to resolve that, Dawn.
Okay.
Yes, and if you and let us know, I guess let us know like every time you do find it and stuff like that, so we just make sure that the problem is getting getting addressed and things like that.
I will do so. When you go to close it, you don't hear a click or anything. It's a difficult gate. It doesn't sound like it's closed. So I always push it back to make sure that it is closed.
Are you talking about the one with the green button on it?
Thank you.
Yes. Please. Yeah, please make sure it's closed. Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
And sometimes it takes a little while for that to re-engage. You'll hear the click. It takes a couple of seconds, but yeah, definitely pull it close. So that's good tactics. Thank you, Don.
I think Don is talking about the gate that we use. They close or lock the other gates because of COVID and because they don't want people walking in. So there's only one gate open, and that's the one where the latch always there's a malfunction like all the time. So that's why it doesn't close. And I also wanted to bring up, I know I already told this to Robert, but there was a loose animal or loose dog by admissions when I was actually walking another dog. And I think as a review, I walked away and I thought, should I keep a visual, but I have a dog? And Robert clarified that I should be taking my dog away and I should be calling dispatch at that time when I'm away from that dog. So just in case people encounter that too.
Yeah, because we don't want an incident happening between the two dogs, so you want to get as far away as possible, when you do see that sort of situation, and and call. So, I mean, it's good that you were able to see that dog and then you were able to call. So now dispatch would know where that dog is. But yeah, the animals that we're most responsible for are the animals that we are walking or that are in our care at that particular time.
Cool. All right. Anything else for Rob on the
gates
and gates?
Can you just tell me the gate with the green button? I'm not aware of a green button. Is that the gate I was talking about?
You may be talking about the brown gate. There's another gate with a green button that when you're coming out from behind the back of the house, the holdings, when you walk down those stairs, if you take that pathway, it does have a green button to get back inside. Inside there. But yeah, you may be talking about the one on the other end.
Okay.
I have a question for Rob. When I started out over a year ago, we had dog pairing. So in the yard. So dogs that got along with each other would be paired in the yard. And I understand that's super time intensive. It's probably also risky, but I thought at the time, well, maybe there is an advantage for the dogs in that regard. That was stopped, and I'm not blaming. I'm just asking: is there a reason, time, or riskiness, or does it deteriorate the dogs faster, the behavior, or is there any reason for that?
The reason why I stopped it is that I want to make sure when we go back into it, because I'm not sure what was in place when I came in. So when we go back into that, if we decide to do that, I want to make sure that we have a program, just like we're making a program for the other things. We want to make it safe, make sure everyone is trained up and have a really good understanding of dog behavior. There's a couple things that you need to do before you start to pair dogs. And so we want to develop that program, but make sure everyone is trained, just like, you know, the dog walking program and things like that. We have different levels. So for the dog parent, we want to, if we do decide to do that, have training on that.
Okay. Thank you.
And dog play groups can be very, very helpful, right? Because it's an outlet for many of them that we are not able to give, but they can just do willy-nilly with each other, which is fun to watch too. So I do like play groups. It just has to
Thank you.
be organized. Yep. All right, Stephen, working hand in hand with animal care. I want to toss it your way.
So obviously I'll also be cognizant of time here, but I wanted to briefly introduce this thought. And, you know, I think the number one email I get from everyone is, you know, regarding our staff only dogs or our case hold dogs, which, you know, we're only allowed to walk, and concern about whether they're getting out or not. So what I want to do is make more of a concerted effort to really try to coordinate with you guys, identify the dogs you guys are getting out, and then allowing us more time to, you know, focus maybe on those other dogs. So kind of that's the long-term goal of that, is that we have that time to focus on the other, the staff only dogs that we can walk. So I wanted to see if you guys had any concerns initially with that idea, but I have recently been printing out the schedule with all of the dog walkers included into my schedule on the days of the week with my staff. I think that would be good at some point for us both to be able to reference that tool and see, you know, who's working when, and kind of go from there. And this is really only pertaining to our holding areas. I think everywhere else we're fine. So I want to make it specifically to the holding area. And I wanted to get your guys' thoughts on that, and maybe what concerns you might have with that, or, you know, what would need to be put in place for us to be able to make that coordinated effort.
Hi, Stephen. This is Karen again.
Hey.
I think this is a great idea. Everything I've heard so far in this meeting, I think has been really positive. One thing I think all of us notice with the dogs that are in the back is sometimes it takes a really long time for them to be assessed and maybe get the collar dot that allows us dog walking volunteers to take them out. So maybe, I don't know why sometimes it takes, especially dogs that kind of come back, sometimes don't have, you know, get the collar dot and don't get taken out. And we don't know if they get taken out. So we always worry about that, right? So I think it would be great if maybe that could be either speeded up or letting us know why it takes a long time for certain dogs to get cleared. If it says staff only, that's totally okay. But if nothing is said, it kind of leaves us in that limbo, not really knowing what's going on.
Yeah. What I can share a little bit about that. I mean, one of the things Rob and I, along with Ginny and admissions, have really been working on is, you know, getting Rob some additional support and getting the evaluations done. So we've worked on kind of, I guess, not professionalizing, but, you know, putting it more in a consistent manner of the handling for the reviews. And then our intention within the next couple of weeks is to begin training other staff members to do in-rooms as well. So it will help support Rob in being able to get right through the animals in a much quicker way. Right now, Rob's on his own and, you know, and doing the in-rooms, and he does a, you know, great job in trying to do that, but he's also managing lots of other kind of skill things up in the air. So we should actually start seeing some improvement, I think, in the length of stay waiting for review. And that will help on some of the holding. And then I think the other piece of this too, as I kind of mentioned earlier, as we're developing and really looking at behavior in the review process and being open to looking at certain behaviors that maybe we can put forward for adoptions. That process is a little slow right now because we're kind of working through kinks and we're having conversations, and it's kind of a growth opportunity for many of us. and working together. And I do anticipate as that's progressing, that again, the length of stay in the holding areas will start being reduced as well. So hopefully that helps a little bit on understanding why they are sitting a little bit longer perhaps than what we would even like to see, right? But we also don't want to just go too fast where we make errors. So it does kind of slow down just a little bit.
I have a question,
But we
Renee.
are
Could
working
you
on it.
define? I think you said in room. I didn't understand what that meant.
Yeah. So the review process is what we're kind of formalizing is the review process, of course, is looking at the history of the animal and any behavioral information that's shared, either that be from the owner or finder or officer. And then we do an in-room handling component. So it's, just interacting with the animal, touch, how social are they, and looking for tolerance, checking for arousal levels, how quick, if they do have a quick arousal, how quick do they recover to that arousal, which gives us then ideas about how to keep them a bit sane while they're in our care, right? What kind of activities do they need? So that's more about the in-room. And we also look a bit for possessiveness as well. So if there's any possessive issues, what those are, and then what we can do to assist that. And then there's the dog to dog. And we've just developed the criteria for when we would need to do a dog to dog. So rather than having to do it on all dogs, there's just a certain criteria. If they meet these criteria, then we would want to introduce them to other dogs to make sure that, just to see, are they selective? Do they actually have interspecies aggression, or do they have some leash issues or something like that? So those are the components. And once they've been through that, then they get their final kind of color code that they go to when they're in holding and or as they get moved up into adoptions. And those colored codes that we utilize for you, those are fluid as well, right? Because as new information is gained, then it could take a yellow dog down to a blue or a green. And just the same, we may have a blue or a green, but then an incident happens and it might kick it up to a yellow, right? Because we use those codes to identify for degree of handling skill sets to make sure that we're not putting individuals at risk who aren't prepared for that type of dog. So the codes are fluid, but so our intent is it sounds very lengthy, but we've got the in-room. It's about probably, I think, 6 to 7 minutes. Dog to dog takes a little bit longer because you're getting the dogs in and out. So that's about a 15-minute process for a single to 2 dogs at a time. And then the history review, that just depends on the information and then looking at the whole thing together. So when you kind of put that together, once they're looking at it in the in-room and they're reviewing everything, that's where they're going to, oh, no worries. That's where we're gonna then make the decision about like recommendations and things past that point. So, and again, I do anticipate that length of stay in that process reducing. And I would expect that to happen rather quickly once we get the staff trained. And to get the staff trained, Stephen's also joining on that team too. So he's going to be doing some of the behavior reviews as well. I would anticipate the training for the staff to be 2 to 3 weeks before the first group is really good and ready to go right out on their own and collecting that data.
Thank you. Thank you, Renee.
Sure. All right, Stephen, did that help you at all? Did you get any feedback? It sounds like.
Yeah, so I mean, I think the first thing that we need to work on, and I would be coordinating with the animal caregiver at that time. So what I would say is, if you're interested in starting this, we can take baby steps. There every morning. So if you're the 7 a.m. dog walker, there should be an animal caregiver in there around 8 a.m. after feeding and cleaning our recovery. Anybody scheduled with a purple color is identified as the holding area. So that schedule is located in our admissions building. So finding that person and coordinating with them would be kind of, I think, the first step. That schedule is posted there for you guys. There's it's really easy to find. It's on that cork board. So would anybody have any initial concerns with just doing that? Like, so if you're you're the early morning walker, would you guys have any issues with coordinating with that animal caregiver?
I wouldn't think so. Excellent.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, no, so that's kind of the first step in that direction.
Excellent.
And I will keep my teams in the loop that you guys will be seeking that out. And that way we're just on the same page. And as we grow that effort, then we'll start looking for, improving whatever we might need to improve on around that. So.
Perfect. All right. Just kind of keep going. So just before we kind of open it up for question and answers then, because we want to allow plenty of time for that, just what's coming up. Rob is going to be putting out a newsletter to the group once a month for now, and then we'll see how that goes. If we need to get it out sooner, or even more often, then we'll review that here in a couple of months and see how it's going on that. Zoom meetings, we'd like to have this type of a Zoom meeting with the team of dog walkers about quarterly, just to touch base. How are you doing? Keep you up to date on any changes, and maybe adding in like a training component into the meeting. So we're all kind of growing and moving forward together, but also give you an outlet to kind of ask questions and things as well. And then thank goodness for Zoom, right? It makes it so much right now. Protocol for walking paths. We are working on there's just been some confusion of what is the walking path? Can we go through the dog park and those kind of things? So Rob and I are finalizing that. We really were hoping to have it for today, but it just didn't have. Yeah, Rob's like, it's just right there. But that's okay. We can send that out to you guys via email. And then, of course, answer any questions that you might have as it comes up. It's just really more or less formalizing it and figuring out the walks, because even kind of going back to that escape dog, right? If the dogs learn what their pathway is, and also they're familiar with it, and then they'll also kind of know the way back home in another way too, right? So it's important to kind of keep them consistent in that structure as well. The new DO, so Troy Kerstetter is starting next week. So he's coming on board, and I'm actually with the organization at least through May, and potentially a little support even after that, as Troy comes on and gets his feet wet. Hopefully not literally, right? You guys are kind of in the rainy season right now, from what I understand. So maybe he will actually literally get his feet wet. I'm not sure. But anyhow, so he should be coming on board. We're all very excited to have him coming. And then, of course, for new volunteers, I've kind of captured all of Rob's hours here lately with the behavior stuff. So we put a little hold on bringing on additional volunteers, and he's going to be moving back into the weekly volunteer trainings next week. I think it is, Rob, right? Next Saturday, or is it the following Saturday maybe? No, I think it is next Saturday.
It's next Saturday. We're gonna be doing some of the Zoom training, and then weekly after that we're gonna be training doing more hands-on training. So we'll be training level 1 to get you guys help and get more people on campus and get more of the dogs walked.
Sorry, Dave. What's a DO? A DO, sorry, that should have known that acronym. It's for Director of Operations. He's a me. So, but he's going to be your permanent DO, no, Director of Ops. All right, I'm just reading the notes too as they're coming in. So very confusing. We are looking at the boards, so we could chat about that here in just a minute too. All right, so we can kind of move on then just to questions, because I'm sure you have lots of them. And I actually can just take that chat one and we can talk about that. Where did my chat go? Somewhere. Here we are, chat. All right, so Judith, it would be helpful for the volunteer who goes back to holding if the people who record on the 3 boards do so in the same way. I've gone back and there could be a history of 2 or 3 days, very confusing. Yeah, so Judith, one of the challenge, I mean, the bulletin boards are kind of a challenge in a couple of different ways. And so we are working on cleaning those up a bit, identifying what data is going to go on it. And who's also responsible every morning, right, to go in and kind of clean it up and prep for the day. And also for animal care staff, who will ultimately be responsible, well, actually it's whoever's moving the animal around, staff-wise, to make sure that they're putting the correct kennel number and things on it as well. So if you do have any suggestions for that behavior board, maybe things that you think would be helpful for you to know in addition, or clarity on a certain column, that would be helpful for us as we're kind of revising how those boards are going to be, what they're going to look like and how they're going to be used. So open to hear anything, or you can also send it via email too.
I have one sort of observation and suggestion for the dogs that are in holding, but this would be really helpful for the dogs that are in the runs. I noticed one of the staff members on Sunday mornings, or last Sunday when I was there, next to the dog's name had written their color. So blue, green, yellow, orange. And that saved a ton of time with going back and forth or taking pictures of all the placards so I know who I could walk. That saved, even if you can save 10, 15 minutes, that's another dog we could get out. So that might be helpful in the runs too. And I know I definitely know some of the kind of long timers that have been there a while will update the boards as much as we can. So I know that's definitely a challenge, but that one little thing, and I let them know too, that was a very pleasant surprise because it really saved some time. I wrote, a note on the board and my time walked and was just able to go right to the next one. So that helped a lot.
Thanks for that feedback.
Excellent.
Mhm.
Yeah, definitely. Because we've talked about that, making sure the codes get put on those boards. So that's really good. Yeah.
Yeah. My animal care team did bring that up yesterday at our huddle, that they were saying it might be much easier for you guys to indicate who they can walk at a much quicker glance. So I told them that, yes, they should, go ahead and put that on there to make it easy. So they had permission to write that on there. So it should be in the holding areas too now. So I saw it the other day. I saw it in large dog holding 2 written on for all the dogs. So hopefully that does help you guys out.
I have a question.
Yes.
When I first came to the Humane Society, those large runs, the concrete runs that, there's a long, narrow run and the back is where usually the beds are and everything, that was almost full. And of course, it's been almost empty for the last number of months. Is that just because of COVID, or is that because who determines what dogs go in there as opposed to Doghouse Blue or Doghouse Green?
Well, I can kind of field that question.
That'd be great.
Yeah. So most of the time we're deciding between Doghouse Blue and Green based more around size. So that's what indicates those areas. But when we have a dog that's a little bit more dog reactive, we like to utilize the adoption runs where there's not as many dogs passing by or as much traffic. So we will use that space for them. And then we'll also use it for dogs that just have a higher energy level and, can utilize that large kennel all throughout the day to run back and forth. So those are kind of the 2 aspects that we consider when we're putting them in there. So
because there were only 2 in there last week, just 2 dogs, and then the 1 pig, and I just wondered how come more of those aren't filled, or we just don't have the dogs to put in there, or.
I think we prefer to utilize. I mean, that there is that right now, but there is the fact I think we like the houses because they got the play yard. They have a little bit more. They're easier to access. They're a little less exposed to the weather. So and when we're preferring an area for them to go to, it'd be the houses first, and then adoption runs based around what's more of a fit for them. But oftentimes we're moving them if we have a high downpour or a stormy day, then we're trying to move them, or fireworks, we're trying to move them. So out of the adoption runs. So we prioritize the houses for the dogs that it's appropriate for.
Okay, thank you, Stephen.
And Dawn, if we
Yeah.
had the number of dogs that were available for adoption, then we certainly would utilize those. But you know, on an upside, right, in a way, because not so many animals are being relinquished. So it's actually kind of a positive, but a negative in the sense that there's not necessarily a lot of dogs available for adoption. But a positive that maybe people are keeping their pets more and the strays home, and that could be very much influenced by COVID. And that's also very common, actually, what's being seen across the mainland as well. Fewer animals coming in.
If I could ask a follow-up on that, there are days when after maybe an hour to an hour and a half, all the dogs have been walked. And is it okay to take a dog out for a second walk as opposed to just, you know?
Yeah, what I would prefer, yeah, absolutely. Dawn, I'm really happy that you asked that question because, you know, just what I would prefer is that they get to go out for their walk, right? That's really nice. And they should have at least 2 of those a day. That's ideal. But then with that extra time that you have, that's time that you actually could go in and spend time with them in their kennel and make that a very positive human interaction.
Got it.
Right? Just having human touch, petting, talking to them, maybe doing some training, doing sits, and look at me, your baby behind you is like, woohoo on the.
That's a very good thing to say. I have a question on that. The other day, this adorable little puppy came in named Scamp, and he is in Doghouse Green. And apparently he was found loose somewhere in town at 3 months and adorable. But he came in, he was so aggressive, they said. He was biting everybody. Not that he could do all that much damage at that age. Yeah. But I finally decided, well, I was going to try. So I went in there. And of course, those little puppy teeth were all over me. But within about 15 minutes, he was on my lap licking me. So I did enjoy spending that time in the kennel.
Yeah. And it's really important, you know, that there have been studies that actually have shown, there was one specific study that talked about, they had a group of dogs that got out for a walk 4 to 5 times a day. They'd go out for a walk 15 minutes or less. So it was under 15 minutes each of the walks. And then they compared them to dogs who went out 2 times a day for their kind of potty walk breaks. And then they had a 30-minute time frame with a human being. So some of that was just in kennel, some of it was going out and doing some maybe, you know, a little agility work, a little training, a little play, a little fetch, but just time with the person, right? And what they actually found was that the arousal levels of the dogs that got out 4 to 6 times for just walks was spiking constantly, which is not good for them, right? But their arousal levels would just spike. And what they found then with the dogs that had the 30-minute chunk of time with a person, that their arousal levels, not only did they plateau, I mean, they lowered, but they plateaued. So they didn't spike. They did better in care if they have that 30-minute chunk of time. Now, if you can't do 30 minutes, they did do a follow-up study and they did 15 minutes and 15 minutes of that human interaction and found the same results. But if you can give them the 30-minute, it's beautiful. I mean, it's so good for the dogs. You know, it's just amazing.
And it was so rewarding for me too. That Scamp was just, you know, I was ready to take him home right then. But, you know, I just love that quality time just sitting with them.
Right. Yeah, it's good for them. Really good for them.
I would just add the mental stimulation is just like, you know, just as physically exhausting as a walk, right? So that learning those tricks, those, even just a simple trick like sit can be a very like mentally taxing thing for the dog, right? And it's good for them.
That's right.
And you can even do those things during the walk too, and that even adds to their walk. Sits, waits, those not pulling on the leashes, like trying to teach them those behaviors can even improve their overall exhaustion. So, which is what we want. We want them to be exercised.
Also with that, we have the behavior plaques. You may have seen them kind of sporadically, but we're trying to increase some of those, and those are the behavior plans. And many of those behavior plans kind of involve getting into the kennel and kind of hanging out with them, especially for the shy guys. That really helps a lot with
Yeah.
behavior modification.
Well, Renee knew right away who I was
Definitely.
talking about when I
Oh
said
yeah, I know
Scamp.
Scamp.
Of
I know
course you did
Scamp.
too.
Oh yeah,
And
I know
how is he
Scamp.
doing?
Yeah.
He's already, isn't he in a home now?
He went out. Yeah,
to rescue.
he went out to
Then we
rescue. We
transferred him
thought,
to adopted
getting him out to kind of like that foster
and
in
get
a
him in a
home
home.
situation.
I didn't think he'd
For
last
him.
there long. Yeah, he's too cute.
Oh, no way. He just.
Oh, he'll get it.
Yeah.
Yeah, he'll find his home
Yeah,
very quickly,
great.
I'm sure. There was on the chat that they're instructed not to interact with puppies. That's something that maybe you and I, Rob, can chat about off-site, offline, just what that looks like, and if we can make
Yeah, I
something
saw
different
that
with that.
note
I'm
from
not sure what
Lennis.
that is.
Did I do
Yes.
something wrong by going in
Oh,
there?
well. Right now the protocol is we're just not interacting with the dogs that are about 6 months or under, and that's just more from a vaccination and medical standpoint. But
Okay.
that is something that we can review.
Yeah, let's chat about that.
Sorry
Rob.
about that if I did something incorrect.
No, I think we can find some common ground in there. I mean, that makes sense if they've not been vaccinated, maybe not to take them out walking where other dogs have had bowel movement, that might be carrying the disease or something like that. But it doesn't mean that we might not be able to do some things in kennel. And it could be timing, right? So give us a chance to have a look at that, because I think we could
Yeah,
probably
I didn't take
change
him
that a
out.
little
I didn't
bit.
take him out. I just spent some time in the kennel with him.
So another question came on, are we allowed to stay past the scheduled shift time to sit with a particular dog for a more extended period of time? I think the only times that we have that are restricted, right, are like taking them out for walks. But Rob, correct me if I'm wrong, there wouldn't be any challenge with them if they just wanted to spend time with the animal in kennel or at kennel front.
Yes, I mean, if you're in a kennel, it's a safer place. In the kennel, you're not walking the dog out on campus. After hours and things like that. So it's like safety for your person and safety for the dog as well. The dogs will enjoy it.
Yeah, so I don't think there would be a challenge with that. I think it's more about when they can actually get out and go out for a walk. That's the restricted hours.
Yes.
So here's Andrea. I have a question. It's a sensitive one, but I don't mean any bad with it, but sometimes, all of us care about these animals, and when they're out in adoptions, and they're gone, sometimes I wonder, are they being adopted, or were they pulled for some reason, or what happened to that dog? And that worries me a little bit sometimes. And so I was wondering, and I understand there may be legal reasons, I don't know, but would it be possible to share with the volunteers, the dog walkers, if dogs in adoptions have been adopted or what happened to them?
Yes. I encourage you guys to come talk to me anytime if you want to know about what dog's outcome. I'm definitely transparent about that thing, about that sort of information. Well, are you talking about doing something more on a more regular basis?
Yeah, I don't know if everybody feels that way.
Saying, hey, this dog got adopted, or
Yeah. It's one of those things, and we won't probably have an answer for you, but I'm curious to hear because, I think that there is, yes, we want to be able to provide you information, right? Particularly as maybe dogs that are on the adoption floor. The question is, how do we do that? And then the other side of the coin is that my experience has been that there are, and now it's kind of getting into that more sensitive area, right? That's a little bit harder and more emotional. But if a decision's made that an animal is going to be euthanized, that, to be able to identify the individuals who would like to at least know, right, and have that information without sending it out to people who actually don't want to know, because sometimes I'd rather just not, if he's gone, he's gone. And I just want to kind of move on. And I want to respect both, sides of that coin. So I think it's trying to develop a means and being able to provide the information, but with an avenue of only those individuals who would like to have that information when it comes to euthanasia, if that's the decision that's been made. And there are a couple of different ways that we could do that. One way is that one shelter that I work with, what we've done there is we created a Facebook blog. And so what we do is you ask to be a member of that blog, and then you're prepared, right, to hear that information, because the information we share on that particular blog is that sad news, we're having to say goodbye to, and who that might be, and then a brief description of why the decision was made. So that's like one way that for that particular organization, it worked really quite well. And that way people can sign up, they can get the information if they want it. And then if they don't have to see it, and they don't even go onto that blog. So I want you to know we are looking at different options, because I do totally understand from a volunteer's perspective that you want to be able to have that information. And sometimes it's even harder, like just to, go to Rob and say, hey, what's happened with it? It's sometimes a little easier if you can just kind of read it and deal with that individually. And then if you have other questions, then of course you can follow up and ask questions too, right? So anyways, that's kind of where we're at with it, but it is with the intent of somehow how can we communicate with you and be respectful for everybody. Yeah, especially for the animals that are on the adoption floor, right? That's touching so many people. Yeah.
I have something to follow up on that. I've seen other organizations that basically just show the animals that found new homes, kind of like a little positive note, this dog found another home. And that's basically just a picture, I found that, I found another home. I found my forever home or whatever. But just, then it's not on the sad part. It's only the positive sides. And that's kind
right.
of
It's always looking at the other side. Yep. Yeah, I like that too. I wrote that down. That might be something I could work with Kai on.
I was going to say, you could even maybe do like your monthly meeting, or monthly newsletter. I'm sorry, that was what I was going to say. And then you could put the list of adopted.
Who was adopted?
Yeah, I think that'd be an easy report to pull for the month. So yeah, then you just copy it into there so they can all see that.
That's a good idea too, Stephen. Thank you.
I think all of this sounds great. Communications is difficult, but there is a tendency on our part, or a reactive reaction on our part, to just go to the adoptions people and say, what happened to this dog or that dog or whoever. And I think what some people may be reacting to, maybe I'm wrong, is the kind of dismissive, we can't talk about that, or they're fine, or just, why are you asking that? Kind of response. Right. And that's kind of off-putting. And so for Rob to say, call me anytime or contact me anytime, well, you're there and you saw the animal and you want to know what happened to the animal because you either had a good experience, a bad experience, or you developed some kind of caring for that animal, and then just have people say, don't worry about it. Or to have Rob say, well, email me or call me or do something like that. So you're looking for some kind of reassurance or reaction right then, not mail me. And I think that Karen's suggestion of, if you could just make it positive, put a positive post up there, this dog, this dog, this dog, this dog were all adopted. And then if the person, the animal you're not interested in, or you're interested in, is not on that list, well, then you can follow up further, or you can assume that dog is somewhere else. So I don't know, there's other ways to handle it than just having the admission staff or the adoption staff kind of look at you and go away, No.
Well, first off, I'm sorry that you had that experience. But I also want to just on the other
side. It's all the time.
I know.
It's
The other side of it, the other side of the coin in that situation is that, and what I've typically done in these kind of circumstances is that everybody gets attached and is really, you know, like, so it could be that they are just as sensitive about that situation with that animal as well. I'm not excusing to be rude. That's not acceptable, right? But one of the things that I also am trying to have happen is that rather than having you go and ask just a staff member, hey, what's happened to so-and-so, out of respect for the staff member who actually may be struggling with their own grieving process with that particular animal as well, they may not feel like wanting to talk about it, right? And it's already sensitive for them. Maybe they didn't even agree with the situation, but it's what happened. And now they're going through their own grieving process. But we still need to make sure you have the ability as our volunteers to get the information you need, right? But I like to be able to keep it to where it's in a very kind of organized fashion and not putting the staff members in that kind of a situation either. Because I know just even as myself, as a staff member or person who's been in so many roles, including being involved, right, in making the decisions for euthanasia, it's very emotional and it's very hard and it's very difficult at times to not take questions personal, you know, like somehow you're questioning why we did it. And when I can look at it from a really clear perspective, I understand you have the right to know what decisions were made, and you're simply asking for yourself, right, to work through that yourself. And so that's critically important. And I want you to know our intention is that we will provide you information. We need you to have it accessible to you, and also trying to be very sensitive to staff members who may be struggling through those same kind of decisions that you are, right? So anyways, I don't know where I got off on that, but I know that it's quite sensitive, and I really want to make sure that we take care of you as volunteers and get what you need for you, and that's fair and we should be doing, right? And at the same time, really taking care of the staff too, and making sure that they're not feeling it personal when they're going through their own grieving process of saying goodbye to an animal that was in their care. Particularly if it's been on the adoption floor, because that now is an animal that's been there for a period of time. They've really gotten to know them quite well, just like you, right? And then decisions are being made that they may not feel like they have any say in, and it's just really hard. So I'm very sensitive to both sides of that kind of process. So I appreciate the information, Dave. I love the idea of the board. I think that's something we could do right away, because we should be rejoicing as animals are getting homes, right? That's a good positive thing. So I think that's something we could do right away. I'll work with Kai on that. That shouldn't be a problem. I think Rob absolutely can include that in his newsletter, along with maybe updates of animals that were pulled from adoption and where we're at with them. We can certainly include that, animal updates. And then I think we also look at maybe some other means of communicating to you when a euthanasia decision is made. So we can make sure that you have the option if you want to know that information. So those are kind of the 3 tiers in that type of communication that we really want to get in place.
I mean, I have to say, I'm in admiration of everybody who works or volunteers at a shelter, because let's face it, it's humans doing why these animals are there. And so all of us working there or volunteering there are trying to correct the situation a little bit. So I admire people who work at shelters full time and have dedicated their lives to that. And I understand completely that if you have 8,000 animals dumped in front of your yard every year, there's just no way that you can possibly take care of all these animals forever. And then there's health issues, all those things. So these decisions have to be made. And I think they're made in a programmatic and educated way as they are. I think then that makes it less hard for all of us, because there's a reason behind it. And so, and for me, it's really, I understand all that. And as Dave points out, for us, it's just and as we all agreed, I think there's great ideas there. These guys got adopted, positive spin, love it. And the rest, we don't need to know more in principle. And that's fine. You know, that's okay. We did our best, and I think that's good. That's good.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you.
I have a comment. I think because we all know there was a recent, especially with, I'm so sorry. I've got a roommate. That's why she's in here with me. We're all adults and we volunteer. We know the realities of shelters and just everything that the Humane Society does, or we wouldn't be there. If we had specifics, if it was bit someone, bit another animal, bared teeth, something more than if we knew of a dog acting like mine here, and then we hear behavioral, we go, what do you mean? It's like, ooh, red flag kind of behavior. What? They're perfect.
Yeah.
I just walked that. There was nothing that happened. And so I see it as, you all have to protect the staff. There's legalities, trying maybe to protect everyone, but some that can potentially, I don't even want to say backfire because I don't mean it negatively, but sometimes in the attempt to soften the blow, if I heard, we'll pick on my dog, Pua bit a potential adopter, that I'm going to understand a lot more than Pua had a behavioral issue. Because that just kind of, but what do you mean? I never saw that. So the transparency that has out recently is very much appreciated, because that can, for a lot of potential, not that we're questioning any decision, but just
I
what
totally
exactly
understand that. Yeah.
So that's been super, and moving forward, that if it's possible, I think could really help those of us, didn't see exactly what had happened.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And that is the type of kind of communication that we want, particularly for dogs that are on the adoption floor. It's just working through logistics of how we're going to provide it, I think, that we need to work out, whether it continues to be in an email format or a blog or, some kind of communication. So, because we certainly understand that, right? And I also think when you're talking about behavior, most dogs are not, like Dala is a perfect example. Dala was adopted and then returned. I'm sure you all know that, right? And was back in review for nearly a week, or just maybe a day past a week. And part of the challenge was the behavior that was displayed in the new home was actually quite concerning, and it frightened them. And so it was a possessive aggression over, I think it was a pork roast or something that he knocked off the counter, jumped up on the counter and got into the pork roast. But the aggressive display that he showed toward the woman was very frightening and concerning. So we really need to look at that very thoroughly and make sure that, is he going to be safe? Can we put Dala back up? We already had all of this invested in Dala. Everybody's already been, really attached. And so it did take us that time frame to really have those conversations, among the team, to make those decisions, and everybody was able to put in their kind of feedback about what we were going to do. So in that turn, then it turned out in a positive end result for him, at least at this point, right? Back available for adoption, but with some more restrictions, and Rob's going to do a lot of follow-up on him to make sure he's safe. So my point is, I do think that we will be able to provide you, at least some information, so you're aware of what's happening. It's just really finding the right outlet to do that, and know why you need it. That it's not because you're questioning. It's about, you just want to have information, so you're not filling in the blanks without information, right? That's the biggest challenge I think that can happen. And I think it's also important to know, though, dogs don't always display horribly all the time, right? And so what Dala did in that home, the positive things that we've seen about Dala didn't take this away. We know that this exists now. So in combination with all of it is what we were able to say, we're able to manage this safely, is what we think. right? And so for that reason is why he was made available. But it doesn't take away what he did and what he potentially could do if put in the wrong situation, right? So just got to be very careful about that too. Yeah. I know we've gone over. I'm assuming you're all good just because you're still with us. But I'm also very conscientious of everybody's time in the afternoon. There were just a few questions about thoughts about using an air corrector for dogs that nip and jump. Are you talking about like an air horn kind of thing or a compressed air? Yeah, is that what you're referring to?
Air.
Yeah,
the compressed air that comes in a little canister.
Yeah, my preference for dogs that are doing the kind of nipping and jumping up at you is to do a calm session with them. So they actually learn calm, and they're learning something rather than, you know, just reacting to when you have the can in your hand, because they will quickly associate that negative to just the can of air typically. So if you don't have it with you, they're not going to learn differently. What they're going to learn is, oh, she doesn't have it, and, you know, go back to jumping up on you. But we can offer, Rob, we could send out the calm to them as well. Have we? We haven't done that, have we?
We have not, and just to add to that, we always want to give the animal a positive outlet for any behavior we're trying to manage. So, you know, telling him what to do and not what not to do. So telling him what to do is actually more important, because he can probably do a lot more things in that one thing. He can have 10, 20, 30 other behaviors he may be able to do.
Right. Yeah. So, but the calming is very easy if you have the right size leash, which I think you guys do with your 6 foot. And so we'll send that out as a handout, something you can absolutely work on. And it works really, really well. And for these guys, once we get it rolled out to you, and we could do a little mini training session via Zoom. Rob could even do maybe some on-site. I just put him on the spot. He probably wasn't prepared for that because I just thought of it. But we could maybe have Rob do some on-site, just one-on-ones, have 5 people come together, and you guys could just go through the calming session so that you kind of physically do it with Rob there to guide you, and then you can implement it. And it's so lovely because these dogs learn when I'm with the person, I have 4 on the floor or I'm laying down next to them, right? And so it's a really kind of lovely tool for them to learn. And then the whiteboard
I would love to
information.
know that myself. Yes, I would definitely.
Yeah,
love to
we'll
have that
definitely send you out the handout so you can look at it, even maybe practice with your own dog, so you just get a feel for it. And then Rob, I kind of did put you on the spot, but maybe we could schedule something that you could do a little mini training on site, and we could do a Zoom one too with some videos. I'm happy to do that as well.
Definitely, I would love to train you guys up. For sure.
Cool. All right. Anything else for today's meeting? I hope you found it helpful. And I also hope that let us know if it's something you don't want to do, right? But otherwise, we definitely want to have it quarterly and really, you know, keep the communication going. So I think
I loved
it. Excellent.
Yeah, it was great.
Excellent.
Thank you.
All right. Well, I want to thank Rob and Stephen, and I think Therese might still be on. Thank you guys for also, you know, jumping in and being a part, and really appreciate your time. You guys are awesome. And so we'll see you all sometime right in the future. All right. Have a good rest of your day.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Okay. Thank you.
Sorry about my dog.
Oh, no, don't apologize. We all have them.
It was wonderful to see. Yeah. It's like,
Very happy little dog, I think.
Star of the show.
My husband's that guy staying with us is back, so she's very excited right now. So
she's very happy. So no worries. All right, take care. Bye. Bye-bye. Rob, Stephen, you want to stay on for just a minute and we can, or did Stephen already pop off? I think he did. Stephen, are you still there by any chance?
It was on one of his devices. Oh,
that's okay.
We're
How'd you
still
take that,
recording.
Win?
Oh, yeah.
Uh,